Good evening and welcome to Earth to the Other Side. My name's John, your host, and tonight I am speaking with Aaron Thomas Green, who had a near-death experience, and I'm very excited to get into it. Welcome to the channel, Aaron. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate the chance to talk,
My
share my
pleasure.
story.
Absolutely. So the floor is yours.
All right. Well, just a little bit about myself. My name is Aaron Green. I was born in Durham, North Carolina in 1975. When I was two, my parents moved to Chesapeake. Um, I currently work as an electrical engineer. I work at the company that makes aircraft carriers and submarines for the U.S. Navy, Newport News Shipbuilding. Anyway, um, as a kid in Chesapeake, back then in the late 70s, or early 80s, we didn't really have TV, video games, cell phones, computers, that kind of stuff. So we would just roam the neighborhood all the time, playing uh, in people's backyards, going to other people's houses, that sort of thing. Anyway, one day, shortly before my sixth birthday, I was with maybe six other friends in a neighbor's backyard, and my brother was there too. And, we were just playing, doing kid stuff. And I don't know what happened. I still don't understand what happened, but somehow I couldn't breathe. Like I developed a breathing problem. I couldn't take a breath. No matter what I did, I just couldn't get air into my lungs. And it was becoming very frustrating and difficult and upsetting that I couldn't breathe. And I started trying to walk home, but I only got maybe about 20 feet away from my friends, and the breathing problem, it triggered something. It caused my consciousness, my soul, whatever it is I really am. It left my body, and I watched as my body fell to the ground, and I just kind of floated there. And I looked down at my body; it was just laying there, and it was obvious that who I am, what I am. It's more than just this physical body; like it's different. It's kind of like getting out of a car, I guess. Anyway, I looked back at my friends, and everything seemed so trivial, what we had been doing. And the breathing problem, life in general, it just kind of felt like trivial in that instant when I was now looking at the situation from a new perspective. Anyway, a couple things happened very quickly. One was my entire life, those 6 years, it basically flashed in front of me in extreme detail, like everything, every little thing that had happened to me, it replayed. And the difference was it was not only did I re-experience things from my perspective, but I could also like feel the impact I had to those around me. Like I could literally feel their feelings, and I like understood their experience and how I had impacted them. And as a kid, what really stood out was my parents. That was the primary people I'd been interacting with, and I'd clearly had the biggest impact on them. And a couple of things really stood out. One was my mother's love for me. It was somehow clear that that was important, it mattered. It meant something. It had a significance to it. And then also my dad's frustration with having a baby. I mean, he was a good father and everything, but I could literally feel his frustration at dealing with diapers, dealing with crying children. And as I'm a parent now myself with three kids, so I can certainly understand that now. And but at the time, it was crystal clear. It was like obvious that he was very frustrated with dealing with uh, the difficulties of raising a small child. Um, anyway, when it was over, it seemed like I had done almost nothing. Like those 6 years had been almost trivial. That I hadn't really made significant decisions. I hadn't done a whole lot. Anyway, um, after that, I was still just floating there, and I noticed a bright light in the distance. It was like a very faint pinpoint of light, but I knew instinctively that it was very important. I didn't understand why it was important. I didn't remember it specifically, but there was something about it that I knew was very important. But I didn't continue to focus on it. I turned my focus back to the backyard, and I was just kind of floating there, trying to figure out what was going on. It was kind of confusing, but I started having questions, and as I would have questions, it was like the answers would come to me. And one of the first questions I had was, "What am I?" And it was like I could see myself. I looked at myself as I existed there, and I could see that I was a round orb, like a little ball of faint light. Um, as a kid, it reminded me of an egg. And I couldn't really explain it, but there was like some detail there. It was a little bit more complicated. And anyway, I was just like a round ball of faint light, just pure consciousness, I guess. And I had more questions. I wanted to know, well, where did I come from? What's my backstory? Because I didn't know any of that at that point. And I relived or re-experienced something that I had previously been through that I had completely forgotten. And so it was kind of like a memory, like a spiritual memory that came back to me. And I saw that I had begun in a what I would call a sea of souls. I was a round orb, and I was with hundreds or thousands of other of these orbs of consciousness or souls, and we all existed in a what I would call a sea of light. It was very bright, and we were all together, and we were all happy, but we were ignorant. We had no experience. We hadn't done anything. We I view it kind of like a spiritual nursery. Um, but periodically, we would get a treat would come to us. As a kid, I thought of it like getting a cookie. It was something we didn't need, but it was kind of nice to get. And one time, there was one fewer treat than there were souls, and so I made the conscious decision. I'm going to let all these other souls around me. They're just like me, and they want this treat. So I'm gonna not get one so that everyone else can have one. And when the last treat came to the last soul, I was very, very gently lifted up out of this group, and the care with which I was lifted was very noticeable, like very gently lifted out of this group. And I was contacted kind of like a mind-to-mind communication, like uh, telepathic communication. And I could tell this was a very powerful entity that was contacting me. And essentially, it told me that it was my creator, that it had made me, and I was very loved and cherished and very important. And not just that I was loved and cherished, but everybody, all the souls there, we were all very much loved and cared for. And um, I'll just, for simplicity, I'll just say God, because that's who I view this creator as. I was told basically that I was a new soul. I didn't have any experience, and in order to, and that God had created a wonderful existence for me and for everybody else, just an absolutely terrific existence. But we were new and inexperienced. In order for us to really appreciate what God had in store for us, we needed some education, some training. We needed to learn some stuff. Basically, God explained that God is loving, kind, compassionate, honest, caring, gentle, and in order for us to enjoy everything that God has in store for us, we need to freely choose those same kind of traits for ourselves. I was told that we were created with free will, that we could make our own decisions. We weren't made to be just mindless uh, slaves to God's will, that we were empowered and intended to be able to make our own decisions. And that, but to enjoy our existence, we needed to choose those loving attributes for ourselves and have that kind of demeanor. Anyway, um, God explained that He had prepared like a school or a way for us to learn through experiences, and that when we were done with this school, with this education, we would be prepared and ready to really enjoy our existence, and we would have all the bad stuff out of the way. We wouldn't have to go through anything bad again. It would be over with, and we could just enjoy our existence. But in order to get there, we had to go through this kind of training. And I asked God, well, couldn't you just change me? Can't you just make me like this so I can enjoy my existence? Why do I need to go through this hardship? And basically, God said, yes, absolutely. God was capable of changing all of us, but that God respected our free will, and that was like a core attribute of why we were created in the first place, was to have free will. Um, so anyway, I thought, okay, that I guess that sounds good. I didn't know any different. Um, but God was absolutely sure of this plan. The confidence that God had in this plan was immense. Like I can't really overstress it how confident God was that this is a good plan, and that every little detail down to the last tiny part had been planned out and thought about and considered, and that if there was a change that could be made to make it better, God would have made that change. Like it's already, it's perfect. It's as good as it can be. Um, anyway, so I thought, okay, this sounds reasonable, I guess. And so God asked me, before you go on this journey, do you want to see my face? And I was like, sure, I guess. I didn't know any different. Um, so my attention turned. I had been looking at all these souls I was with, and my attention turned, and I was looking at a giant. It looked like a giant sun. Only there was like millions and millions of souls all together in the sun. Uh, Little balls of light all together formed like this huge sun, and each individual soul, they simultaneously maintained their individuality, but they were part of this bigger entity. It was like they had the best of both worlds. And some of these souls kind of came to the surface, and I could see their face clearly, and they welcomed me into existence, and they were happy that I was um, uh, that I had come into existence and that I was going to join them someday. Basically, every soul was unique and irreplaceable, and every soul brought something to the group, and so they were happy that I was going to join them because it would increase their happiness. Like it would be beneficial for them when I joined them, and so they were happy that I was going to join them, and they understood that I was going to go through something very difficult because they had all been through the same kind of process, and they wished me well, and they were happy that I was going to join them someday. So then, God asked me, "Are you sure you're ready to undergo this difficult adventure?" Um, and I agreed, and God was very pleased with me, and it was like I was shot out of a cannon, like I was moving very, very quickly away from this scene, and um, and God was still like communicating with me through telepathy or like mind to mind communication. And we started looking at all these different planets I could go to. There was thousands and thousands of different planets I could go to that we looked at. I mean, it seemed like there was just an immense multitude of physical places I could go to have the kind of experience I needed to get the education I needed. And we looked at thousands and thousands, and I had the intelligence, I could understand what these planets were like and what was going on there. I don't remember any of it, only that I saw a whole bunch of them. But when we got to Earth, there was something about this planet. I was absolutely sure this is where I wanted to go. Like I was positive this was the place for me. And God asked me, "Are you sure?" And I said, "Yes, I'm sure this is the place I want to go to." And with that, um, the decision was made, and I was going to be coming to Earth. And so with that, the that memory ended, and it's like I was back to just floating in my neighbor's backyard, just kind of wandering around. And so I had more questions. I wanted to know, well, why am I Aaron Green? Why am I this person now? Like, how did I become this person? And so again, a memory replayed something I'd been through previously that I had forgotten. And this time, so the first memory, I was like a new, inexperienced soul. I hadn't been through anything. But this next memory, I was clearly much more experienced. I'd been through a lot. It wasn't my first. It was obvious this wasn't my first life. Like I had experienced a lot before this, and so I was a soul with some guides, and the guides were they wanted me to come back to Earth again, and I didn't want to come back to Earth again. It felt like I had screwed up the last time I was at Earth. Like I had made a lot of mistakes, and I really didn't want to come back. And the guides, the guides basically were encouraging me to come back to Earth, and I said, uh, "I'm not going back, and you can't make me." And the guides agreed. They said, "You're right. We can't make you go back, but if you go back, you're going to help a lot of people." And they asked if it would be okay if they showed me some of the people that I would help. And I said, "Well, okay, you could show me." And so they showed me some souls that I would help if I came back. And somehow that changed my attitude. And I thought, wow, if I could help somebody, maybe it would be worth it. Um, so I was open to considering the possibility of coming back. So they wanted to show me, okay, well, here's some people you could become. So they showed me one person I could become, and this was a very angry person. Like their life was dominated by anger. I think they like I would have had a very difficult childhood, and it would have made me an angry person. And that's who the guides were suggesting I become. And I just flat rejected it. I said, no, there's no way. I'm not doing that. And so they respected that. They were like, okay, well, let's look at some other options. And so they showed me some other options, and they showed me a family that I could be born into. And I uh, I started looking at the options available for this family, and it was apparent that they had the genes available to be to have a redheaded girl, and somehow that really appealed to me. I like the idea of having red hair because it's pretty rare. I guess it's the rarest hair color. Um, but that really appealed to me. I really liked that. And I wanted to be a girl because I felt like I'd be less likely to hurt other people. I think maybe I hurt people in the past in my most recent life, and so I was very concerned about that. Um, but there was something about my personality and the redheaded girl genes. I guess there weren't a whole lot of them, and somehow it just didn't fit together right. And if I had made that choice, I would have been a redheaded girl, but I would have been socially awkward. I never would have gotten married. I would have trouble dealing with other people. I just it wasn't really what I was looking for. And so we started looking at, okay, well, what about the boys available to these parents? What kind of options are available there? And so it became obvious that there was lots and lots of choices for brown-haired boys for these parents. And so we started looking at some of the different options. And the first thing I thought was, okay, I want to be like the best looking guy on the planet. I want to be really, really good looking. And those genes were available to these parents. I could have made that choice. But my guides started to show me, well, with your development level where you are, if you make that choice and become a really, really good looking person, you're not going to be able to resist certain temptations. Women are going to treat you differently. You're going to give in to certain temptations, and you're going to be very promiscuous. And uh, and it was obvious in that setting that there was a downside to to being overly promiscuous. Like there's a spiritual downside to that, and that was unacceptable to me. So I said, okay, I'm gonna we'll back down the attractiveness to something more average. A little bit attractive, but nothing. No one's gonna put me on a magazine cover. Okay. Um. Anyway, when we got to the right level of attractiveness, then we did the same thing with intelligence. I wanted to be like the smartest guy on the planet. Really brilliant. And those options were the genes were available to these parents. And just like with attractiveness, if I had been really, really intelligent, my guide showed me that there was a downside to it. I would have been arrogant. I would look down at other people. Um, I would have trouble making friends. There was problems associated with being that intelligent for me. And so, just like before, we backed down the intelligence to a little bit intelligent, but nothing extraordinary. And when we got to the right level, okay, it was like, okay, this looks about right. Um, and it's safe to say I had say or input, or it was my decision. All the attributes of this physical body I was going to incarnate, down to the most intimate detail. Like I knew everything that this physical body was going to have. Um, and one option that seems kind of odd was that the guides pointed out that this body and the parents that I had, like the option was available to have a clubbed foot. Somehow that the genes were there, and it wouldn't benefit me, and it wouldn't benefit other people in my life. And so I passed on the club foot because it was kind of like there wasn't a benefit to me or those around me to have that club foot. So I passed on it. And I'd never known anybody in my family who had a club foot, but I actually did one of these interviews, and I was contacted by a distant relative, a second cousin I'd never met, and got to talking to him, and he told me that I think one of his siblings had a club foot, which I thought was interesting because I'd never heard that. I'd never realized that I had a relative with a club foot. So anyway, it was interesting to have that confirmed by a relative that the genes I guess are in the family somewhere. Anyway, when we got the physical body picked out, we started looking at some stuff that my guides had planned for this life, and they showed me little kind of like clips or a highlight reel. They showed me some different things I had done in previous lives, and that they showed me how that was now going to be set the stage for what my new life was going to be, some of the stuff I was going to have to deal with. And they showed me a number of different clips and things I had done, and it was clear, I'd had many lives before this, and some of the stuff I did was really good. I'm happy about it, but some of the stuff was really bad. It feels like I've made every mistake possible. I've done everything wrong a person could do at some time or another in the past. And I've learned from that, but it's a little bit shameful to see all this horrible stuff I've done in previous lives. Um, but some of that stuff is now it was going to be played into this current life. And one of the clearest, easiest examples I had was they showed me in a previous life I had gotten in a fight. I had been kind of a big guy. I was strong, and basically I beat up this other guy pretty bad. And I had felt good about it in this previous life. But now watching this scene with my guides, it was clear I had gone too far. I took advantage of my large size. I didn't need to beat up this guy. I could have easily avoided this fight. And it was clear that what I had done wasn't the best choice, or that's what I felt. That's how I felt about it. But it was like I had done something in this previous life that it was like an unbalanced equation, and now we had to balance the equation in this life, or you could call it karma, or it's like I wrote a check and now I had to cash it. However you want to say it, it's clear that what I had done in this previous life was now going to uh, set the stage for this current life. And so they showed me that the plan was that I would have my nose broken. I would get in a fight and have my nose broken as a teenager. And that would alleviate me of, it would give me the education I needed to, feel what I had given to another person. Now I had the chance to feel it. And that would be like an education. And I would then learn, not to do that kind of thing. That's kind of how it works. It wasn't like I was being punished. It wasn't anything like that. It was more like I was being educated. But I needed to agree to it. And I agreed to it. I knew that it would help me in my progress and my, uh, it would help me like go to higher levels because this event that was unresolved, it was like holding me back spiritually. And so by undergoing this difficulty, it would help me to continue to advance. And they showed me other stuff I had done. Some of it I don't want to repeat because here in 2024, this is really bad stuff. It's like um, it's stuff I would never do now. But in a previous life, hundreds or thousands of years ago, some of this stuff I did, like I don't know, uh, it's not all good. One example is I had been some kind of tribal leader or something, and we had I mean I don't even know when this was, but it was kind of like I was an Indian, and basically we were at war with this other tribe, and we had captured one of the enemy tribal people, and basically we beat him up pretty bad. We mistreated him, and then we killed him. And one of the things that happened when he was being mistreated is his arms were dislocated, his shoulders were dislocated. And now in this life, um, my guide showed me that I was going to have my shoulders dislocated because I had ordered my men at the time to hurt this guy, and now I was going to receive that same treatment. And I was shown that I would have my right shoulder would be dislocated as a teenager, and then my left shoulder would be dislocated and broken as an adult. But I needed to agree to it, and I agreed to it because that event, what I had done to this man, a long time ago, it was holding me back. It's like it holds you back, and by experiencing what you have actually done to other people, it liberates you, even though it's difficult. It liberates you from your mistakes, and it gives you an education and allows you to proceed to higher levels or greater happiness. So I agreed to that. And there's a number of other things that they showed me something I had done in a previous life, and now I was basically going to get what I had given out. And this is not all bad. Some of this stuff was good. I had done some good stuff also, and so that also set the stage for the life I was going to have. Anyway, they showed me all kinds of stuff like that, and then they also had there was a lot of interpersonal relationships that were planned out. Um, Friends I would have, people I would meet, like the guides had this all work together. Somehow God can incorporate all these different lives, all these different plans together and plan it out perfectly so that we maintain our free will. We're free to make whatever decisions we want, and yet somehow God's able to weave all these lives together the way they need to be. And so some things are planned out pretty big detail. Like there was one point in life where I was going to have a difficult time in life, and there was a friend that was going to be there, and like that friendship was planned ahead of time to ease my difficulty during that time. And then another part of this that I think is kind of interesting, that initial group of souls I had been with, um, I there's like a close bond that I have with them because we spent time in the spiritual nursery together. And so I think the common name is it's called a soul group, the group that um, that you spent time with, you have a closer connection to them. And so there was some members of my soul group where there would be a critical juncture in my life where I would need to make a certain decision, and there might be a member of my soul group that I would come in contact with, and somehow they would encourage me to do what what I had been planned what had been planned for me to do. Anyway, I think it's interesting that when we meet someone from our soul group in life, we have like an intuitive knowledge that we know them, even though we may have never met them in life. And God can use that to get us to make certain decisions or encourage us to stop certain behaviors or whatever. But I saw that that was planned for my life with a couple members from my soul group. Anyway, when we had this all planned out, my guides again asked me, are you sure? Are you sure you're willing to do this? And I agreed. I said, yes, I'm willing to live this life, and do all this stuff. And so with that, the decision was made. And then it's like I was going to come to Earth and be born. And so then that memory was done. I was back to floating in my backyard, and I had another question. I wanted to know, well, what happens to souls, after they die? Like, how does that work? And I was shown, that I had lived many lives, and I was shown, where I had been between lives. So I was shown a number of I don't know, realms I had been in between lives, and one of them was what I consider to be a hellish realm, where I think I had been a hateful, angry person, and like I don't know, I guess hurt a lot of people. I don't know exactly, but somehow I'd been what I would now consider to be a bad, violent person. But after that life, I was in this hellish realm, and I was like, I looked like a monster. I was absolutely miserable. I was just fighting with those around me. We would just fight constantly, and no matter how badly we were injured, those injuries would quickly heal, and we just were dominated by anger and hatred of those around us, and that's all we knew. That's all we did. But eventually, I stopped trying to fight with those around me, and when I stopped fighting with those around me, there was like a being of light or an angel that swooped down and pulled me out of this battle, this melee. And they told me that when I stopped trying to fight with those around me, I didn't belong there anymore. And they told me that all these other souls that were there, they would all eventually leave also, and they were going to then transition me to a new life. And I saw that between another life, I think I had been an atheist in life. I'm not sure, but I had existed in this place where it was dark, and me and a whole bunch of other souls were just kind of standing around, kind of lost and confused. We weren't miserable. We were just kind of a little bit unhappy. It wasn't like a horrible existence, but we just kind of stood around in darkness and didn't really understand what we were doing or what was going on. And again, there was beings of light or souls that were like at a higher level. They were going around trying to help all of us. And me and the other souls in this condition, we were very distrustful of others. Like we had not been trustworthy people during life. And so now in this state, we had a lot of trouble understanding that another soul might be there to help us. That was such a foreign concept that it was hard to accept. But eventually, um, a soul, like a higher level soul, uh, uh, they had like a light to them, but like we were like all in darkness, and this one soul was like they had the light to them. Anyway, this had been someone that I had helped in life, and and this person remembered it, and now they were trying to help me as I existed in this unhappy place. And eventually I agreed to go with him, and he was going to help transition me, and I think get me started in another life. I saw another place I had been between lives where it looked just like a town. It had roads and buildings, and I remember seeing a lamppost very clearly. And the people or the souls there were very happy, and they were doing similar stuff to what they had done on Earth. And I view that kind of like a low level version of heaven. But the souls there were very happy, but what they were doing was just like what they had done on Earth. And then I saw another place I had been, another realm, where it was like there was a city made of light. All the buildings were made of light. The people there, like you could see through them, they were translucent, and everyone there was really, really happy. Just I couldn't even describe their happiness. But these were all different places I had been between previous lives. And when that after seeing that, I was back to floating there near my body, and I remembered something clicked, and I remembered that when I'm done with this life, that I would be able to go back to a happy realm, like I would be in a happy place, and that really I was really happy about that. I was excited. I wanted to go back. I wanted to go back to this place where, which I considered to be my home, and I knew I had friends there, and the friendships that souls have is so much deeper than the friendships we have here on Earth, and I was really excited about that. I wanted to get back to my friends, back to my home. I was ready, but just as soon as I had that thought, this angel or being of light, I don't know who or what it was, but they were very powerful, very like a high level soul, I guess, or an angel. I'm not even sure, and they came at me, or he came at me very quickly, and he was absolutely beautiful. I can't even describe how beautiful this being was. He was translucent. You could kind of see through him, and he was made of light. And what I think is interesting is our face has features to it, and you can kind of look at someone and you can tell some stuff about them, like kind of their age, their gender, if they're happy or sad, that kind of stuff. But with this being of light, this angel, there's like internal features, and they tell a story about what kind of soul they are, what they've been through. Like by looking at them, you can see all kinds of details about them, way more than we can here on Earth. Um, and it's like a much more intimate connection because you can see so much detail about who this soul is, that you can't see on Earth. But anyway, he was very clear. He basically contacted me telepathically and said, "You are not to leave your body." It was like I had done something wrong. My breathing problem should not have been like I shouldn't have left my body based on that breathing problem. Like it felt kind of like I had bent the rules a little bit. And anyway, with that, it's like bam, I was back in my body, and um, I stood up. I didn't have a breathing problem anymore. I was kind of confused. I walked back home and tried to explain it to my mother, but I was a little kid and I had a speech impediment, and there's just no way I could explain that, all the stuff that had happened to me. Like it just wasn't going to happen. But I would think about this experience daily for maybe 6 months and try to understand what I had seen. And then after about 6 months, I was contacted by my guides again. I knew who it was because uh, it was like mind to mind communication. I didn't see anybody, but I knew exactly who it was, and they essentially said that what I had done, what I had experienced. Uh, First off, it was going to cause some changes in my life. They were going to need it would change my life plan. Like they wanted my approval to change my life plan because it was needed to kind of correct for what I had done. And so they made some changes to my life plan with my agreement that would make my life a little bit more difficult. Um, so I wasn't real happy about that, but they told me it was necessary so that I could really understand and appreciate the experience that I had. Um, they also told me that they needed to hide this experience from me because it was interfering with my ability to have faith. Like I couldn't have any faith because I had seen it. I knew about God, that God existed, and some of this spiritual stuff. So I could never develop faith, which in order to develop faith, you have to have a little bit of uncertainty, or not know the answers. But they told me that that was very important, and that um, um, but they needed my approval to hide this experience from me. So I agreed that they could hide this experience from me, but they said that I would I would get these memories back when I was older. So I agreed, and then I like never thought about this experience until I was maybe 35, something like that. And I was reading an article about a Newsweek magazine article about Eben Alexander, and um, I read the article and I thought, wow, this is really cool. This guy had this experience, and I believed on a deeper level, I guess, than I had previously, that hey, that maybe this stuff is all real, this stuff about God. Um, but somehow that triggered all these memories to come back, and I um, it's like kind of like half of the memories, like all of a sudden they're back, and then other stuff, like I remember things more and more as time goes on. But now I've been trying to share my experience, trying to make sense of it, and explain it to other people. Um, and one other thing I wanted to point out is, when I was a teenager, my nose was broken. I had no idea that was something I agreed to. It was a difficult experience. I had my shoulder dislocated, and my other shoulder dislocated and broken. I had no idea that was something I agreed to. It's just, I thought it was just life. But now I understand that those are some stuff I agreed to. So anyway, that's my experience. That's what happened to me.
Wow, that there's a lot to unpack, and thank you so much for sharing that. How long do you think, or do you have any way of knowing how long you might have been out or dead for when this happened?
I estimate it was about 30 seconds. When I stood back up again, my brother had noticed that my body had just been laying there, and he came over to check on me. And when I stood up, he went back and played with our friends.
No
So I
kidding.
guess about 30 seconds.
It's amazing how much can happen in 30 seconds.
Yeah,
Wow. Before I get into some of the questions I had, you actually, this is really funny because in the so-called green room before we started taping, we talked about how memories can be triggered of our own experiences years
right.
later. And I think well, not so much a memory, but a realization happened to me while I was listening to you. And that's because my NDE happened at the same age as you. I was 6 years old in grade
Okay.
one.
Oh, okay.
And I always had memories of the incident and what happened surrounding the incident, but I didn't have anything, no memories of the NDE portion until I was in my late 40s, early 50s.
Okay.
Yeah. And now I'm starting to think maybe for the same reasons, and it came in a meditation too from a guide.
Right.
So I'm thinking maybe for the exact same reasons you explained, apply to me in terms of why I wasn't allowed to know all those things. But at the same time, I understand what you mean by I still had a very openness to the other side, other realm, and a big, huge curiosity about it.
Mm.
And I sometimes now think that it's probably because of those doors or whatever you want to call them, channels that have opened up since our experiences,
Right.
that kind of never go away and little things kind of seep in
Yeah.
now and
Yeah.
again. So yeah, 30 seconds, that's quick.
It totally seemed to me that like time in this realm doesn't apply in the spiritual realms. Like it doesn't work the same.
Most
It's just
definitely. Yeah,
it's just
no,
fundamentally different.
definitely different. It's so different. Like, because I don't know about you, but for me, I have pretty vivid memory now since, the NDE portion came back into my life, of what it felt like. And, a lot of people ask me, well, what did it look like? What did you see? I don't remember seeing anything.
Okay.
Sometimes I would see, you know, physically what was happening down below with my body and the other kids and teachers and stuff. But you don't see things the same way either. You don't perceive things the same
Right.
way. I didn't need to see anything else. It's what I felt. What did your guides look like when you could see them? Not the time when they came back
Right.
later on, but do you remember them having any particular appearance to you?
Yeah, so they definitely took on the appearance of like old men with beards.
Okay.
with like white hair. But I think even at the time I understood like that was just the appearance they took on for my benefit. Like that's not what they look like. That's just it was like if they look like that, that's the easiest way for someone who's because I still had like the 6-year-old mindset for some of this stuff. That's just what the appearance they took on so that I would understand that they were experienced and wise and they knew what they were doing. But so they look to answer your question, they look like old men with long beards. But I just view that as a temporary appearance for my benefit.
And what about you? Did you have any sort of memory of your space, or was it sort of like what I described that you were just not in any particular space?
Well, it was a number of so my
Well,
experience
let's
kind
say
of
in
spanned a whole lot of
the
different
initial
realms.
one when you first heard the communication.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, do you remember where
Well,
that
when
was?
I first left my body, it was like I was a round orb, kind of floating in the neighbor's backyard. That's kind of what it felt like. Um, but I mean, it seems like I've existed a bunch of different in a bunch of different settings, and I took on the different spiritual appearances based on what that setting was like or what I had been like at the time.
Hmm.
I got the impression that the way we look in the spiritual realm is directly related to our own internal thoughts. Like, here on earth, the way we look doesn't, I could be a horrible person and look and be beautiful, for example. But in the spiritual realm, it doesn't work that way. Like the way that your appearance in the spiritual realm is directly related to what kind of soul that you are, how loving and kind you are. And so, when I had been a hateful soul, like I was hideous. And when I'd been more loving, I was much more attractive in the physical, in the spiritual realm.
Hmm. You had mentioned like at one point you were in those lower realms in sort of like a village or something similar to that,
Right.
and a kind of earthly looking place. Do you remember what those souls look like? Did they have that sort of same, representation of whatever is what they were feeling at that time, or did they look like humans or what?
Yeah, I view that as like a low level heaven. They look like humans. They look like people.
Okay.
The whole setting like something you'd see on Earth. Only the buildings, the streets, the people. It was all more beautiful than what you would ever see on Earth.
Hmm. Do you know who you were initially talking to, speaking with at the very beginning of your experience?
It wasn't like an individual entity was
Okay.
talking to me or explaining stuff. It was more like I was pulling from a vast reservoir of knowledge and wisdom.
Like the Akashic records or something, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not real familiar with those,
It's
but
basically a library database of everything
right.
everyone's ever done or
Yeah,
ever
it's
thought.
like we're all connected to something like that, and we can draw on that
Hmm.
and pull that knowledge. Um,
Yeah.
and so I was doing that like intuitively, like somehow I just knew how to do that. It was just natural as a soul. Here's a person I don't quite know how to do that, but as a soul, it was just perfectly natural.
Yeah. At any point, did you have sort of like any connection to your guardian angel during this whole experience?
Um, I guess I'm not sure. I definitely there was definitely some guides I communicated with at one point, and this high level like right at the end this angel or whatever it was that came to me and sent me back to my body, like that may have been a guardian angel, but I'm not sure. He didn't have a name tag or explain exactly who he was or what our relationship was, but um, I think that may have been a guardian angel. I'm not quite sure.
Maybe. Very possibly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the way you explained things is a really good way of explaining karma. At least my basic understanding of it. It seems
Right.
very relatable. I hope we're on the right track with that, but it certainly seems to make a lot of sense to me. That's for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm an engineer and I think kind of mathematically. So I think like an unbalanced equation. You got one side of the equation written in a previous life, and now in this life you gotta balance out the other side of the equation. And somehow that I mean that works for me just because of my background, but
Hmm.
there's so many ways to say this. What you do in a past life, it affects your current and future lives. It was just that was so clear and obvious.
Well, it makes sense. Yeah, and it's not like
Right.
a punishment or vengeance or anything. It's just,
Right.
again, in line with the learning experience and the evolution of our souls, right? I
Yeah.
think that's
Yeah.
something that should be,
How does a little kid learn not to touch a hot stove? Well, they touch a stove and get burnt, and they learn, hey, don't do that. Well, it's
yeah.
the same kind of thing for us souls. We do something that hurts someone else, and we get that hurt, and then we learn, we understand, hey, don't hurt other
Mhm.
people.
See, because I
Uh,
always thought, I guess, I don't know if consciously or subconsciously, that when we have finished our life, this particular life that we were living on Earth, and we go through the life review, that is where we had the point of our learning and really absorbing everything that we experienced and tying it together with what we, have learned in the past and just kind of like tying everything together. I thought that was it. I didn't really think of anything like about karma. I mean, yeah, sure, I've thought about karma here and there, but I didn't think about it in these terms, and it makes a lot of sense. I wonder if both exist, that both things kind of just work in tandem,
right.
both concepts. I mean, it's hard to tell really, but it
Yeah,
would
that's
make
kind of how I
sense. Yeah.
view it. That it all works together, and it feels like different things, your life review and living through life, but it's like it's all the same thing.
Yeah. And you touched on some things that I've been talking about on this channel for a while now, and I've always thought, generally speaking, we're all little pieces, crystals, orbs, whatever, of the greater God,
Absolutely.
creation,
Yeah.
whatever. And I always thought all these little pieces absorbing everything in this creation that it made were just, ways of that entity to learn instead of just being omnipresent everywhere. They would learn by experience through all these fragments, which are different souls, which is us. And it still makes sense to me because that's how this connection that we all have together, I don't want to get into politics now, so I'm going to just strike what I was just thinking of bringing up. But it does really like tie in everything to me. It makes total sense that we're all connected and we're all one and we're all part of a
Right.
bigger piece.
Right.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. And I think also if you understand that, it helps you realize that like he's not throwing away or forever torturing a piece of himself. Like that's not how this works. Like no one's going to be discarded and thrown away and have no chance of,
Hmm.
coming back.
I am kind of a little bit curious about your religious background, just in terms of like where you were at that time, at 6 years
Right.
old. Yeah.
Right. Well, I was a kid of 6 years old. I was raised Catholic. We would go to church every Sunday. So I'd definitely heard about God before, and I'd heard whatever they teach up to like 6 years old. But now I don't consider myself a Catholic. I guess I guess I'd call myself a follower of Jesus, if anything. Um, I think the term Christian has a whole lot of different meanings to different people, and not all of it fits me perfectly. But at the time, what I saw didn't line up with what I was taught in the church. A loving God, absolutely, that part fit perfectly. But some of the other stuff didn't. It wasn't a perfect match, and so it's not like I just had an experience that confirmed everything that I had heard in the Catholic Church up to age 6. It was like they weren't. It wasn't all the same. It seemed obvious to me that what I had learned in the church was not perfect. Like it wasn't 100% accurate kind of thing.
Right. Right, right. And so you remembered enough when you came back to make that realization, or is this something that came a little later when you had more memories of what happened?
Well, during my experience, one of the things I saw was that I had seen my parents' religious views. There's no secrets in the spiritual realm, and I knew the parents that I was going to get. Like I knew exactly what kind of people they were, what kind of souls they were, where they were in their spiritual progression, what their religious views are, what kind of parents they would be. And so I took a close look at their religious view and what kind of religious education I was going to get as a kid. And it was clear that it wasn't perfect. Like it was a flawed understanding. But I saw that they would teach me about God and that God was loving. And that was really important. And as a soul planning my life ahead of time, like that was a big gift, a big benefit to have parents who teach you that God exists and God loves you. And for me, that was enough. Like that was good enough. Like I was happy that they would give me that, even though I knew that a lot of the other stuff that they were going to teach me wasn't quite in line with how things really worked. I think we do a disservice to God when we can't move past the Bible or some other religious document from thousands of years ago. I think if we just listen to those around us who have had a spiritual experience, you'll get a better idea of how God really works than
Hmm.
you will by reading a 2,000-year-old document that
You're
it's
right.
I don't know how it's not perfect. I don't know why people think it's perfect, but it's clearly not.
Yeah. It makes me want to read the Bible again because it's funny 'cause what you're saying is absolutely true. Like maybe now I would see things very differently in certain passages or certain portions of the Bible will be completely different to me. Has anything since your experience, like, in retrospect, that you can attribute to your experience, any little nuances in your life that you think might have to do with that little abilities or that you came back with?
Right.
Is there anything like that you can
Uh,
talk about?
yeah, there's definitely times I feel like our intuition, or sometimes we have a feeling, and I think that comes from our guides or from God. But there's times in my life where I feel like I'm being told, "Hey, you're kind of doing something the wrong way," or "Yes, this is the right way." And I feel like like we all get this, but I feel like I'm able to maybe uh, feel it a little more clearly. There's times where I'm doing something and I feel like I'm being told, "Hey, that's not what you should be doing." And there's times I'm doing something different and I feel like I'm being told, "Okay, yeah, this is what you should be doing." And so that's the only I don't know, ability or I guess a little bit more perception, I think that I'm able to enjoy is just occasionally I feel like I'm pushed in one way or another, or not pushed, but encouraged to,
Clearer guidance, I
yeah,
guess.
clearer guidance, right?
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I think I feel that too. More in my later years, but maybe it's
Hmm.
also because that's when a lot of the memories of my experience happened. So
Yeah,
that's cool.
apparently that's very common for people who have a near-death experience as a child, that they will suppress it or not remember it until they're much older.
Thank you so much again for sharing yours.
All right, yeah,
I
thank
really
you, John.
appreciate it. It's been a real pleasure. And do you have any last message you want to give out in terms of like, do you fear death anymore, and should anyone else?
Oh no, I don't. I definitely don't fear death. I guess my biggest takeaway from this whole experience is, look, we need to be loving, kind, compassionate, honest, have some self-control. That's very important. How we treat other people is very important. And if you just make an effort to treat other people well, you're gonna be glad you did, and you're gonna be able to get the most out of life. It's really that straightforward and simple. And if anybody wants to contact me, Aaron Thomas Green on Facebook, or you can email me Aaron Green 1975 at gmail.com. And I've even had a couple people contact me on Instagram, so feel
Cool.
free. If you
All
want to reach
those
out
things, all
and
those
talk to me,
things.
feel
Yeah.
free.
And feel free to like drop comments. They can reach you in the comments too on the channel if they
Oh,
want.
sure. Yeah.
And well, thank you so much again. It's been a
All right.
really
Yeah. Thank you.
real pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right.
All
Yeah.
right.
Thank you.
Take care, Aaron.